all day tomorrow. Yeah.
Hey everybody. Hey guys, hello, morning.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Morning.
Morning. Hey, how are you guys? Up there, I'm like, how are you? Thank you. Oh, Sandra.
My stuff everywhere, like my kids at home. My 16-year-old seems to think my house is an extension of his closet. So. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Monifa Canute, and I am here to do the social equity workshop today. I am the social equity ambassador for Keller Williams for the Michigan and Northern Ohio region. I am a real estate agent out of KW Metro and now the new KW City. And we just opened the city office and I am downtown every day in the lovely parking that is downtown Detroit. But it's nice to have an office in the city. On the expressway to go to work anymore. So that. So we're today, hopefully it'll be very conversational. And not just me talking all the time. You're gonna want to stop me because I will talk forever. So my kids are kind of happy that happy that I'm doing this today because by the time I get home, I'll be out of words, right? A little workbook that we kind of, it just kind of gives you some of the information as we get started. But what I'll talk to you about before we actually get started is kind of like, so to speak, between you and between me as the presenter. The topics that we're going to discuss is, equity and racial issues and different things. And sometimes those can be difficult. So I want you to know that this is a safe place, right? And that we're going to come from places of curiosity. And I hope that we understand, like, years ago when I was doing an interview for some group I was joining, and they were like, what's the hardest thing that you realize when you got, and I said that on the TV shows, right? So we don't always say things eloquently as they might, as they say, come in our head. Like sometimes I sound a lot more eloquent in my head than when it comes out of my mouth. And so let's just make sure that as we're having discussions that we are giving each other, extending each other grace, that we're all kind of processing this and learning this and talking about this. And the only way that we get to talk about it, but allow people to express themselves in a way, don't jump down their throat if they say something that we don't necessarily like. Any questions so far? Yeah, okay. Again, I don't want to be the only one talking, so we're gonna ask some questions and we're gonna, kind of go through this in a discussion kind of manner. So I think it's on 7 is the community agreement. We're not gonna, do like in therapy where we pass the little ball around and the only person that can talk at the time has the ball, right? But let's be respectful of each other as we're having these discussions and, and make sure that sometimes the people on Zoom that, we're kind of letting the conversation move around the room a little bit. And just again, and lastly, just want to reiterate that we just want to make. Any questions so far? So I forgot to move the slide. That's what that slide says. So we're just gonna make sure that we have a better understanding of historical inequities that have led to contemporary deficiencies in real estate for Blacks and others. Two, have a working familiarity with the vocabulary and the language of social equity. I work in this field even outside of Keller Williams. I'm a board member of a group called the Social Equity Task Force. And our mission, the suburbs, which is Birmingham and the city of Detroit, and be able to bring these kinds of conversations. And in the last several years, there's been words that mean certain things that didn't mean certain things probably 5 or 10 years ago. You know what they mean and know what people are talking about and referring to. Identify opportunities for us to resources for us to be able to grow our business and be a more equitable and purposeful have a more purposeful real estate practice, right? Where we're more inclusive of everybody. And deepen the understanding of our relationships with the community, especially with concerns inside the community, which many people do not belong to. So just kind of understanding, back in the day, I used to work for Microsoft, and the teacher class was called soft skills. Anybody as old as me? No? Okay, thanks. About what different cultures did, right? Like certain cultures have a bigger personal space bubble, okay? I don't know if it's personal space bubble, right? So if I'm in the line, like I remember being, where was I at? Lord and Taylor one day, and I'm on the escalator, and this woman, I'm on a little step, being cute, right? And this woman, she is like, right, I need a little space. And different cultures, like my girlfriend of mine, she's French, so she always kisses on both cheeks. That kind of freaked me out the first time. I was like, well, where'd my head go? Like, where's my lips? Okay. What are we doing? And just kind of understanding how different cultures work and what their social construct inadvertently, right? And then identify local, regional, and national organizations that we can be a part of to help us further this movement and help us further in equity in real estate all the way around, right? Any questions so far? I'll do my commitment. This is just I kind of went over this already, the participating agreement. Just make sure that one person speaking at a time, we're courteous, fight defensiveness. Saw that on the Oscars. Let's not have that. And here's one that I like to talk about, even with my and in real estate. Intent is act when you say certain words, right? What I may intend to say may not be intended to be hurtful or offensive, but for that person, and because we don't always know each other's, right? We don't know what our triggers are. Just kind of be mindful that, but if it hurts somebody, just kind of be cognizant of that and understand that we all have our own baggage and our own stuff. Except that no one is articulate at all, right? Nine in your book. Okay, so you're one behind me. Thank you. Okay, the first part is just over the landscape, talking about historical nature, talking about the language of social equity. The second, and talk about different ways that we can kind of affect change. The third part is like, how are we going to implement those things in our business moving forward? Okay. Inclusion. And I just wanted to take a minute and talk about what, because it means a lot of different things. When I worked in corporate America at a bank, you know, we could have a diverse. You imagine that IT was not that diverse. It was a bunch of white male, and it was me. You know, room with a bunch of men that look the same. Age. What's another way it can be diverse? Right? Language. Sexual orientation. So even, and we kind of try to group people in, even a group that looks exactly, but there's within that room, right? Everybody doesn't think the same. Socioeconomic, where, I live in Detroit. Socioeconomic gap in Detroit is that the city of Detroit is 180 square miles. Fit 3 major cities into the city of Detroit, right? So my kids belong to, my kids don't, because they don't have no. We belong. Some of their friends have never lived there in Detroit their whole life and never knew the country club was in the city of Detroit, right? So you can be amongst inclusion. When we hear inclusion, what do we think about? Right? You might not agree with anybody's voice, right? One of the things I've always said, and this is probably about my political, but I used to always say, I'd never W. Bush did. Right? I respected him as the president. I respected him as somebody else who I thought was attempting to do right by the country. I didn't agree with what he did or what he said all the time, but right? So being inclusive and giving people an equal opportunity to voice their opinions, all right, or their viewpoints without being, getting all upset and getting in our feelings. And just basically practicing fairness. Kids learn this in kindergarten. Like they say that, you learn everything you need to know about being an adult by the time you're 5, right? Sharing, right? Being fair. I remember, it was the other day, my oldest had an argument with his brother in the driveway because the 14 in the car on their way to school. Well, first of all, if you hadn't told me, who gets to sit in the front seat, right? And I'm like, fairness. And, some of the things that we talked about in elementary as adults, still remembering to move in that way. Often. right? Equity and equality. Maybe 20 years ago, you heard the word equality a lot, right? People talked about equality. Now you hear the word equity. Right? What's the difference between equity and equality? They both mean like equal, right? Kind of defines it and kind of makes it kind of simple. So equality means standpoint or the same vantage point. So everybody got a box, right? Everybody got a little box. They're trying to watch the baseball game or a soccer game or something. But this gentleman here is already tall. Did he need a box? No, he didn't need a box, right? But he got one because we're just passing out boxes. I didn't know that until you told me. So we give her a box, right? She gets the same size. So she has comes from a different vantage point, right? He's in a wheelchair. What good is a box going to do him, right? And I look at it, kind of the way that I explain it is, but everybody doesn't need the same resource, right? Okay. On the opposite end, you really need the extra help, the extra assistance, or this new resource. But me, I came and not work and struggle during the whole game. And then maybe we took that third box, changed the resource. Does that make sense? Any questions? Any discussion?
Historically, the word equality has been the one that's been most used. People
Oh no, I want equal school, right? But was it really equal school sometimes? No, separate but equal. It was never really always equal. Um, as a parent, my boys are completely different. Same parents, same household, same air, same bank account that none of them contribute to, but they they stay in it. My oldest is a jock. He plays every sport in the world: lacrosse, football. He swims. He thought he wanted to try polo. I'm like, listen, I can't go to another game. I got to work at some point, right? Um, my youngest, but he with school, right? Well, and then he's always, he get home tonight at 6 o'clock. He was up this morning at 6 to do football workout in the morning, go to class. Now he's going to go to lacrosse practice after he gets home at 7 o'clock and does homework, and then he goes to bed, right? The little one, who is not so little because he's taller than me now, he's 14, but we still call him a little one. Parenting. But he is my intellectual kid. My oldest kid, he's giant on the spot. You know, he will get himself in line. I'm like, Caleb, I'm very disappointed in you. Oh, Mom. Oh, my God. That little one, like I have to I basically take his whole room away, right? Everything, TV, phone, computer, you can't go anywhere. You can only eat bread and water. Like you have to take everything away from that kid before it affects him. So equality would be to have the exact same punishment for each kid, right? But it doesn't work on the second. Oh, perfect baby. And my oldest gets upset a couple times. Like, Elijah gets away with more, you treat Elijah differently than you treat me. And then Elijah will say the same thing about Caleb. Well, you never take anything away from Caleb. He still has his Xbox or his PlayStation. Box is in my room right now on the floor. So equality or equity is knowing that I got to get you both to the same end, which is out of my house, right? The goal is for you to be functioning adults with your own bank accounts, your own homes one day, right? And differently, I have to give them both individually what they need, and both of them need something different to be successful, right? Does that make sense? Make it more basic and plain. The whole list of everything in there. I'm gonna pretend like I still know them, right? So you guys don't talk about me later. Here's one that in the last 4 or 5 years, you start hearing this come out, and biases. Oh, she has a bias. She has a bias against me, right? And there are 2 different types of biases that we look at as it relates to social equity. There is explicit bias, which is in your face, raw. I am what I am. I don't like you. I have a bias. I might not like, I don't know. I don't like coconut. So I don't like people who like coconut, right? They don't come to my house. Invite you over for dinner because I'm not making anything with coconut in it, right? So overt is kind of abrupt, harsh. So we see that overt discrimination is a part of that, right? Implicit bias is that, right? It's not really like out front. It's not in your face. It's that joke that I tell that if you get angry, it was a joke. But if you don't, then it was funny. You know that one? Yeah. The little micro things that we do to each other to kind of keep people in line, so to speak, right? Being a Black kid back in a decade that I won't. Downtown Detroit, where there was nothing there but Greektown, right? You can kind of decide, you can kind of figure out when that was. I remember walking down the street with groups of friends, and people would walk on the other side of the road. Or I remember being at Somerset many years ago, and I'm walking, and I'm in a rush because I'm always in a rush, because I'm always running late, because I always said yes to too many things, because that is my life. And I'm rushing, and then I have this hard walk, and I always, because I'm sure I always have on heels. So you can hear me coming a mile away, right? So I'm walking down, and I'm click, 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 click. Right? Kind of how I like to roll. And she turned around and she looked at me, and she kept walking, but then she moved her purse body because I was walking by. That was an implicit bias, right? But it was that would have that type of impact on me. 20 years later, I still remember that moment. like it was yesterday. You know, so it's back to talking about intent versus impact. You know, some of the things that we do unintentionally could scar somebody for a very long time, right? Now, you know, I was walking past the Cartier and just looked through the window. I walk through the front door now. Still can't buy anything. We kind of hold, you know, like you know, people might say, I don't like people with red hair. I hear guys. Here today. So people have these little microaggressions or that they social construct of how they kind of work. Now, it's bad. No. Certain biases have kept me alive. Like one bias I have is towards an open flame. Right? Somebody could say, oh, well, you're being discriminatory. There are things that we learn throughout our lives that kind of help us or allow us to create those kind of social constructs, right? I remember back in the day when I used to date, you know, you date a Mark and he not the greatest. So then the next Mark you meet, you're like, I don't know. Those Marks. Right? We just have to maybe check ourselves and be open enough to be honest with ourselves and understand for that bias that we hold, right? I don't like washing my car. The white cars always get dirty, right? I wash my car probably 4 times a year, right? I could never drive a white car, right? Now, white cars hurt white cars, right? Does me liking not according to the police, and not according to the number of tickets I've gotten because I like red cars, right? Police like red cars too, right? So they can see. So it, right, that does not based upon that bias, right? That is rooted in some form of discrimination. Why we survived dinosaurs, if you believe that, you know, the whole thing, like you knew Rex was not your friend, right? You know, so they're not always bad, is the point that I'm trying to make, right? Any thoughts on that? Any conversation? Yeah.
Like if I'm out somewhere like there's some places like they help because I whatever it is.
Right.
So I mean when you feel like it saves you from
A neighborhood patrol, right? Neighborhood. I know my neighbors. My neighbors, they probably know my kids more than they know me. I like them better. As the kids were little, and if I were coming in after dark, at 4 o'clock, right? I would call the neighborhood patrol to drive down the street while I was getting the kids out of the car. right? And I kept paying a mortgage there, and I raised my kids, right? And we built this whole social circle around this wonderful place with these wonderful people. But like you said, I'm scared of the dark. So my bias is dark, right? I don't like, really, I'm still scared of dark. I sleep with the TV on. My husband hates it. So like I said, in the event of a zombie apocalypse, just let me go. Because I no Amazon, it's gonna be dark. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And being safe do keep us alive. Did you have a okay? Yes.
I think that we also got to be cautious and aware of ourselves as well, because I think a lot of people with explicit biases tend to put thoughts into your own head and start to make you believe that other people have implicit biases against you.
I love that. Right. Right. That is social media. Right. It figures out by nut, right? So I've read almost many sci-fi books. I won't say I read all of them, but and some of the sci-fi movies or books talk about figuring out people's fears. Like, and I'm a horror movie person. Every horror movie, every monster or ghost is figuring out what your fear is and using it. It's almost what social media does. And it starts to make you believe on the opposite side of you. So then you want to walk around, she might be, or he might be, or I don't. So you stop trusting people. That's a really good one. Um, where it's kind of the joke, you know, um, yeah, if you laugh, it's okay. We all heard the joke, the so-and-so and the such and such, and the so-and-so walks into the such and such, right? If you laugh at the joke, right? But if you get angry, it was just a joke, right? Biopic. This is a new one. What biopic means? It is All that time. They missed my good joke. And then we see in the 90s that our Hispanic population was about maybe 10, low up under. And then we have our others. Okay, so who are others? Others would be my children. My children are biracial. So too much to my aunt who believes that akin to Malcolm X somehow, but we're not. So they identify as biracial. They won't fill out anything where they say black or white. They always check us. Let them figure out how they want to be identified. And then as we got into the 2000s, you see the demographics start, right? So we see our others start to expand. Blacks kind of stayed the same. What's the big change that we saw here? It's starting to expand, right? Or people that are now identifying as Hispanic, right? And we can see as it progresses out to 2024, those that are going to identify as white are going to fall right up under, was that the 60% mark? Yeah, 55. And then our Hispanic population is going to get larger, and then our others keep getting. Mixing of races. Identify themselves, right? Because taking it back to my boys, 20 years ago, they would have not had a choice. They would have chosen it for them, right? So we have people who have historically identified as either white or some other group of subset who are now saying, you know, I
Large Middle Eastern population and then of the Middle East would typically claim themselves as white. Are you familiar with any of this topic or subject?
well, you know, who brought that to light to me, yeah. You know, because, you know, and in full disclosure, through my lens, I look at the world through a Black female lens, right? It never, we had that conversation, it made me go back and look at some of that I went to have a conversation with about that because he is Lebanese. And I was like, what? He said, well, we've always chosen white.
Always been told to check off white.
Right. So I learned, and my even after doing this work for a while, you know, some time, my world expanded and having that conversation with you all, you know, and it made me be more empathetic to, you know, somebody else's plight, right? That choose what I am, right? And you know, may or may not, just me thinking out loud, what does that say as you are, right? Right. Yeah.
I mean, I put other.
But think about 10 or 20 years. right? We talk about Asian Americans being the invisible minority. You have to choose one or the other as well, you know. I'd maybe have a conversation with myself and take me out of my own lens of the world and try to see the world from somebody else's juxtaposition, right? Which is really what all this is really about. You know, getting comfortable with trying to see what somebody else might be going through or experiencing. Relates to home ownership in our country. Right? The total homeowners and renters by race from 1990 to 2040. Owners and renters, we see in 90s, we had about 51% of the population, right? And about 22 million, right? And we can kind of see how they kind of stay, you know, around that 50, 60% mark. In the future. We do see some renter numbers increase. What
They can't afford it.
right? I don't tell my business, I'm that person. 14 years ago, 15 years ago, in University District in Detroit. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that area, Northwest Detroit. You know, I'm a West Sider. Another bite. Don't tell anybody. We paid at that time, I want to say we paid $160 for a house. 3 stories, 5 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. I was really excited about having 5 bathrooms until I figured out that that meant that I had to clean them. And then I had 2 boys, which meant that it was their extra in the house, right? Tell other mom stories, but I won't tell all the other people that don't have boys the stories of bathroom time. Nasty stuff, but so a house in my neighborhood closed for $536,000. Nice. But in thinking about the boys are 16 and 14. To live in this type of a neighborhood for the housing right now, right? What has to change? Income.
Yeah.
Income has to change, right? Another subset, Black households. 1990s, about 4.4 million were homeowners, 5.3 million were renters. We see our numbers kind of increase a little bit of home ownership over time. But what else is increasing? Exponentially. In the early 2000s. Predatory lending. Those loans affected what community most? Black community. So, right, where you could afforded loans that not many of them on CNN, where was a librarian. House that was $450,000, that she paid $450,000. Who approved for $450,000 income? And she had an arm, an adjustable rate. Right? So what happens after you have a foreclosure? Right? Not just for Blacks, right? But for any demographic. There is a 75% chance. Parents are homeowners. If your parents are renters, you'll become a renter. So if you create a threshold because we ruin people's credit, right? No matter what the demographic is, in rental, everybody around them rents, right? So again, we talked about it earlier, the generational cycle, right? Whatever the cycle is that you grow up in is typically the cycle that you will continue out. Interesting though here, right? $2.5 million here, right? People who identified as Hispanic in 1990 owned homes, 3.3 million were renters. And look at this. What does this say? Growing. Their home ownership in the Hispanic community is growing at a rate that is blowing every other demographic out of the water as far as growth. Right? And we think so using these slides, and we'll go on to one more, we'll talk about one more, but as we think about growing our businesses and where our buyers are coming from in the future, right? Because we're business people. So use these slides to kind of how you want your real estate business to look. Because guess what? Somebody's gonna sell somebody's house, right? Will it be you? Asian and other households? Look at 2024. Right? What this says to me, said to me, and I'll just be honest and transparent, what it said to me is, like me, am I really being intentional about building generational wealth for my family and for my community at large? You know, the neighborhood that says, no, very dear friend of mine, she's deceased now. She and her husband were the first Jewish on to the Detroit Golf Club. DGC had a rule that there was a restricted club, no Jews, no Blacks, and no women. No women could be members. Could only come if your husband was a member. Irish Catholic bought the house. She and her Jewish husband move into the house. The neighborhood freaks out. Had a rule at DGC to the golf course. You move by a house, it's automatic membership. Don't have to sit in front of the committee, tell them that you're a nice person. We're not talking about I might be old. We're not talking about like, right? We're talking about, yeah. So, like I said, so looking at these slides, what is it telling you about your businesses and your neighborhood community and what you consider, right? It's like my neighborhood used to be all Irish Catholic before Black started to move in. Then it went all Black for a while. Now, I mean, all different backgrounds, races, socioeconomic, career paths. There's a police officer that lives next door to me. There's a judge that lives down the street. There's an architect who lives, So now, what does that tell us about how our yeah. And how do we do that? Like with us? Like, what do I have to do when people that start moving into my neighborhood that don't look like me and don't come from the same background or the same experiences as me? What is that? Communicate, get to know somebody, right? Harder time being that you put your feet up under their table, right? So getting to know some level, but with a position of wanting to learn, right? Because
I have a question.
yes.
Something. First one.
Okay, with everyone?
Yes.
Or the,
Right. Now to the population distribution, the first one.
Oh,
oh, this
there you
one,
go.
yeah.
So if you look at it, there's slightly difference. Nothing has been changed. The Black population is still the same, but others, they like either significantly like grown,
Mhm.
decreased, but why the Black community is still almost the same?
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Oh, I thought you. The people who identify as Black have always identified as Black and going to continue to identify as Black. Unless you outside. She's a lady who, she was white, but she pretended to be Black. Right. There's not. There's not a new group of people who are deciding to now identify as Black. So the white population is dwindling because there are more people, in my estimation, more people who were used to be in that demographic or used to identify as that demographic are now choosing to identify in a different way. Hmm? Mixing of races. What else changes our population in the country? How do we get new people? You get right? We get immigrants. Other people want to, live in great neighborhoods and send our kids to great schools and get to talk to people like you and experience this quote unquote American dream from other countries. Right? So urging at the same time. We have immigration and we have the mixing of races where it has been, become more and more common. When my husband and I got married 17 years ago, you really did not love Black women with white men. Now there's a lot of women from a lot of different races who are marrying a lot, right? So it's, we don't get the looks that, right? You do you, boo, right? They don't say it. That are happening at the same time, right? Last slide. Any conversation about
Way from the home ownership slides. And one thing that we talk a lot about here is teaching involved in that wealth building teaches residents, but also learning how to invest in investment properties and how to position yourself to be able to, one, obtain financing from those
Right.
lenders with your tax return, credit score, and all those things. So what we teach heavily in here of our agents, I think like there's a lot on us to go. As their parents own, they're teaching their children how to own.
right?
And when you start, probably, fair guess would be if they're renting, how to become financially literate, how to take care of your credit, and help them break that across all races.
Absolutely.
I have a theory that I've shared in here, and I believe going on right now in the real estate industry today, it's really put the supply and demand way out of whack. Buyers in the 20-year-old, 21-year-old age group because they're learning financial literacy. So, and now they're getting in a position to buy, and that's why I don't think the market we're in right now is going to change for maybe 2-3 more years. All about learning and understanding how to do it.
Right.
And we're a group who loves to teach and to share those.
Yeah. And to that point, just kind of off of social equity, but to that same vein, Gary's vision speech at family reunions, right? And he kind of talked about like this this perfect storm that we have right here going on, right? I got a lot of baby boomer clients that are just not moving out of their house. Back, the kids would downsize than they ever did before, right? So there's less of those houses coming back into the market because of maybe a death in the family or somebody moving on or, moving to Florida or to Arizona or to Vegas. So those houses aren't coming back on the market, right? But we got these millennials who, right? They got credit, they got great credit. There are programs out there to help them buy houses. And, I have baby boomers that they're just like, Monique, what am I going to do? In a ranch. Finding a unicorn, right? And then they say, oh, I don't want to do it. Say to that. Whatever somebody is willing to buy, right? A watch is a watch, right? I can buy a Timex It does the same thing as a Rolex. Why do I pay more for the Rolex? I pay $25,000, $50,000 for a watch. When they're out of school, we have all the Rolexes. But there's a whole lot going on in this market. I don't think it's going away. Right? What are we like, 5 million, 6 million houses short in the country right now? So, yeah. So now with what we see happening, we know that the market is probably not going to change. As real estate agents, what is our job? To adapt. Buyer, what house to buy. I've had walk out of here. And they're like, oh. That I wouldn't have bought. I had one client page inspection report.
Wow.
But so what is valuable to one person, valuable to other. But in these discussions, knowing that this is going to be the market, and educate people on what's happening in the market, and then maybe find other people to talk to. Right? And you're the one coming from contribution. For the 2040s, the 2030s, we're not. Some of those slides. Black home ownership. Right? We can be a part of, right? By educating them on financial literacy. What do you need to do to buy a house? What is the qualifications? How many of you have had somebody come to you, no idea how much money they needed at close?
Yeah, that's right.
We're teaching these kids, not that it's wrong. But we're not teaching them financial literacy unless, to your point, unless they come from a family, conversations at the table, at the dinner table. They don't know. Black family. I grew up in I say Pontiac. I grew up in Pontiac. But I grew up in right. My family, my stepdad was the mayor of the city for a while. So I grew up being what I considered a big fish family in a small pond. Then I went away to college. Right? Oh, you're to your vacation home, like by how other people live. But having that exposure, I never had that exposure somewhere else. Would I have ever pushed myself to live a different life? Right? Not necessarily a better life, because it just means bigger bills, right? But a different life. Understanding how other people live and other people's experiences and stuff. College that spoke 5 languages. Like what? Like every 2 years, the whole learned another language. Like when I was in school, you chose French. Spanish. Wants to go into international business. There are certain jobs that I never did in high school. You were going to be a couple things. You were going to go to school. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a lawyer. You're going to be a teacher. Growing up in Pontiac, you were going to work for the plant, right? There are jobs out there, right? Technology, IT, solar. Nobody ever talked to me about real estate. So about in my life. That discussion. Water break, and come back, and now we're going to break off and to talk about how we can incorporate this into our businesses. You're welcome. Like, oh, yeah. Kitty place. Um, yeah.
Okay.
I just know where it is. You just kind of drive there. It's always so sweet.
Oh, okay, because I was like, let me see who has better.
Right on Schaefer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Market,
yeah, just the meat market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's really good with his walk.
He is,
Okay.
and he always was like, "Hey, my friend." So it's cool.
Yeah.
It's growing. You're
Yeah.
downtown. I was just driving.
4 years, I'd say. A lot of the Yemeni is actually expanding, and they're
Okay.
opening up restaurants and coffee shops, and
It was amazing. So it's kind of like the microcosm of what we're experiencing in Northwest Detroit with like Livernois. Like that was,
Yeah.
But now,
because for a very long time, they're the Yemeni community, they've just been they're yes,
Yeah.
very private, didn't really
yeah.
now they're starting to this generation is starting to they're
Okay.
breaking that cycle
Okay.
of just working
Mhm.
growing overseas.
Right. Okay.
You're like, no, I
I live
working
here,
I
right.
want to enjoy my wealth here
Mhm.
too. So they're expanding.
That's
with
cool.
that.
Great
Yeah.
to see. Yeah. So that keeps you guys busy.
It does.
Yeah.
It's,
Awesome.
and then, but that's the thing though, that's where it gets tricky with the into a lot of people that are coming from different states that are looking for the community.
Right.
Are you looking for education?
Right.
Or I just,
No.
but I just tell them like, listen, what is it that you're looking for?
Right. No, right. Well, and
Just like you
that's
gotta
and we gotta be careful because I don't know if you guys have seen the Rhode Island documentary. If you know that, I'll send it to you. It's a documentary, and the Fair Housing Administration noticed that this community, no new homeowners from outside of white population.
Okay, yeah.
And they're like, how is this happening? Like, called on a bunch of real estate agents, and called on a bunch of mortgage brokers, and families, not just Black, but Asian.
Yeah.
And there are 18 agents that lost their license because of the steering practices of.
Because, for example, we get. So I, for example, a couple weeks ago got a random lead. Just, you know, to come
Comfort.
into the comfort. I want to
Natural people
that look like you.
Right.
So, like, huh. You're coming off with it because you're assuming.
I only want this group of people to buy my house. Okay, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like my job, able buyer.
Right.
The only money, the color that matters in this sex is green. And people don't come.
Actually, because we have it within our own. Like, well, is it just going to be like art?
Right.
Because other people have finances.
Right.
They can.
Yeah.
You can't stop one group.
Washington, love letters. So, you know, we send a letter with because people would accidentally sell.
Yes.
And then those letters.
They do a lot of that out in California.
Yeah.
So with the letters, people are sending pictures of their family members with it too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's.
Yeah.
Because again, it could be it's in bias.
Right.
Where it's like. You might unconsciously.
Yeah. So I think, I can't remember if it was or Washington, but they outlawed law for you to present them. So.
Which would make sense.
Yeah.
Meeting with the Sherwood Board of Real.
Oh, yeah.
So
you can't say master bedroom is no longer, so it's primary now. And Jack and Jill bathrooms, right? So they're a dual entry.
A lot of us at that meeting were like, what I could say and what I couldn't say, because I was like, wait a minute.
Right.
It was called this. because
Right.
Something happened in our, so I think, and you get both back to it, but at the same time.
Course, that was online.
Yeah.
And there was a lady who brought up, online. And
Yeah.
and so my me because I knew what
Yeah.
they meant, but it did make me pause the first time I heard it. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
maybe not, but there are a lot of things in our cultures that have been detrimental. Right? And but if something I know
Mhm.
I know, right? Because
Yeah.
we've gotten to had a conversation. Known that was the history of it, and that's where having these conversations and being able to not be as triggered,
Right.
and ready
Just
to.
kind of take.
Yeah.
State.
Yeah.
You'll get people that are asking like.
It's up to you and your family. So you got to figure out how you want to live and how
Yeah.
you want. Now, once you figure that out, you guys can kind of decide
Right.
where you want.
It was when I was really white and I was like first.
Right?
I understood because I was like, she doesn't know any better, so I'm going to
Right.
educate her.
Right.
And you're an honorary guest of one.
Right.
Yeah. She didn't know any better. I was
Yeah.
just like.
Yeah. Come on now. Ever had at our fingertips.
So it's like
history.
And to where it's just like, I'm like, listen, you already got one foot in the grave. I cannot.
No. And some words it's not even worth it,
But
right?
I'm just like, there's just no need.
So we
Yeah.
want to do that, well. Yeah.
So we just want to like.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So in this,
Somebody was to experience sexual protocols are to take
Okay.
within the
Keller
industry,
Williams,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
And I was like, what's the protocol? Because, I've been asked this question several times and people, oh, so it starts with your broker, but then it ends up going through the board. We never
Right.
find,
Right.
and they go ahead and
Sure, this
I just want
next
to kind of
section,
like
touch on
base
that.
it, yeah. Like, it's costly.
Right. Right, where, just be.
Yeah,
Definitely. So the match,
yes.
Yeah.
See it all the time to where.
Yeah, we want to get started.
Yeah, I'm saying
Yeah.
you're gonna lose them.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Trust me, they.
I know, I'm a real good. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right, yes,
Because
yes.
a lot of people don't realize.
All right. Get on his hands and knees and scrub that bathroom himself. Yeah, just water for everybody. Guys, well, the first half was a lot of information, right? A lot of me talking. The second part, let's see. Is more about leveraging, right? Let's change the of where the market is going and bunch of renters and make it an opportunity. Into our business, right? So that's what we're going to talk about next. And so we're going to go through or have you kind of break off into of kind of building or talking about how do we proactively build to our business, right? And one of the conversations that we were just, it's not always just race, right? It can be male and female. There are thought processes have about somebody that is married, about somebody who has children, about somebody who chose never to get married. Not to have children, right? I thought that was going to be, I was going to be the fabulous aunt who traveled the world and brought back gifts. And I got married. So, like we are being biased or discriminating against them. All have as realtors. Done the buyer consultation, right? And the biggest cash buyer I ever had in my career walked into my office in jeans, and they weren't. Looked like he had listened to that news report. You're only supposed to wash your jeans twice a year. The t-shirt, drove up in a car that I couldn't drive, and wrote a check. And I felt like a heel. I'm dead. Food, I can get you some lunch. He's like, oh no. Right? Are we having a bias when a single mother walks into your office, right? And do you assume that, well, is your spouse going? One last week, her husband is a stay-at-home dad. right? How many right? The world is changing, right? Um, Once I had my personal story. I remember once somebody said to me, "Oh, I'm just half mine. I contribute, right? It's not just him providing me this, right? We work together as a unit by this life, right? That we do and we say, you guys know who Julie Lachey, director of diversity at the national level in Austin. A friend of hers who white, who is a phenomenal real estate agent. And she recently had a fair housing violation filed against her. Okay. And she typically is what we're seeing right now, with business model from day one. So somebody put in an offer didn't get accepted. Fair housing lawsuit against her saying that her going before the board, she didn't do anything wrong, had to prove that her business practice was equitable. How are you presenting your offers to yourself? Right? Do you do the same? Right? She had to prove. Now, luckily, it worked out for her, right? Stress of the threat of losing her livelihood, of having somebody think of you a certain way, and having your colleagues. You know what I'm talking about, right? Then it sends them a look at all the offers, right? Love letters. Know about love letters, I'm sure. I think it's Oregon or Washington just outlawed love letters.
Yeah, I heard they're very risky.
Why are they risky?
Light on that and tell a little bit about who have those prejudices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you think that you're writing a letter talking about, I have a family with two boys, and I got kids in high school. Well, I know my neighbor next door doesn't like kids. I'm not going to choose your offer. Right? Right? Familial status. Ones tell me I'm not going to choose that rental. I don't want kids in my rental property. I said, then if that is the way that we're going to move forward, then you're going to I know. I like sleep. I like to sleep well at night, right? Um, talk about racial discrimination. Um, the majority of in our country, Black people say to me, I only want to sell my house to another Black. Is there's only one color that matters to me and should you in this transaction, and that is green. Fire. I goes my whole. We're just talking. There's a documentary, I think it's in Rhode Island, where Fair Housing Administration was trying to figure out why this one neighborhood stayed the same demographic. Or changing, this one area always had the same type of people moving into the neighborhood. So they sent out mystery shoppers. 18 agents lost their license. And several mortgage loan officers lost their license because overtly discriminating against certain people. Okay. Well, safe to me, right? How do we get involved in our community? Biased or racist or my best friend. Friends from all different walks of life. Ideas. Joining local associations or boards or committees. Hey, on the diversity page on KWRI, KW Connect, I get them all, I'll get off. Other Williams, we love an abbreviation. A whole new language when you come to Keller Williams. But on the diversity hub, there is different groups that you can join. Was on my social equity task force for the region, NAACP. NAACP was begun. Yes, you can join. You can join Hispanic Association because I support right? I support them having training, right? So we can join a lot of different industries. Let's look at their 3 prompts. So let's look at and break off into different groups and talk about that kind of pushes you outside of your comfort. And forecast in the US, what does this provide for you and your business? So that's what you and your group are going to be talking, right? Right? Where do you farm? Neighborhoods are you actively looking for listings? Because we're all looking for listings. And who are your local experts? If there's not one, guess what that is? If there's not a local expert, that means that they're just waiting for you, right? To accommodate and advocate for clients and intersectional backgrounds. What is Yeah. Right? I can be black and right? And not be that smart, right? There are two things can be true at the same time. That's what intersectional means, right? So how do you plan on addressing and be disabled, right? So our disabled community. Do you like when you walk into, we've all walked into that house, tops are really, really low, and you're like, try on the light switches are low, right? There's probably somebody that lived in that house that was in a wheelchair, right? Are there ramps? Is our business accessible in a wheelchair or a handicap? Or her disability was not a physical one, but it was a cognitive processing one. I sat down and I said, let's get together and just make sure I'm on the same page. So I'm feeling like I'm missing something, or like I'm showing you what you want, but we're still not connecting somehow. And then we sat down to a house that already had and a deadline by 5 o'clock because she's right. Erring sometimes in our business, right? I talk fast. Oh, I hear. So you got to kind of change the overt physical that we can see, right? Ask me again. 9 times out of 10, I have misplaced one of the numbers. The American and Disabilities Act. How are you promoting awareness for non-English speakers? That speaks another language?
Covered on your iPhone. that you could actually translate your.
Yeah. Well, I know that because I watched 90 Day Fiance.
Oh, okay.
Right? I have people that speak a different language. Calls about everything. You got a sprinkler now.
Right.
I need I have gotten I need a divorce attorney. Eek. Okay, but I'm gonna put you on my list. Couple houses, that process. I've gotten calls for a child psychiatrist, because they know that we talk my command on my tags. I tag, or I need an electrician, or I need a doctor, I need a neighborhoods or to our communities from afar. I can of the doctor, the peds that I know. So side note, I'm a command, so you can tell. So that's prompt number 2, right? What are we doing to accommodate intersectional communities? And then prompt number 3, how might you educate your something within win-win relationships? In respectful way. Funny story. I started advertising on Facebook, and because I'm Black, I my husband's secretary or director of first impressions, as we now call her. She's gotten a new role, and she's great. She's white. She went to another. Don't really work with people like me. My husband is white. Or Black people. Because my mark, right, just blew my mind. Found her house. She's very happy. Yeah. But it opened my eyes. I just, what types of seminars or trainings could you host for your community? First time home buyer, grant money, so how can we do that? Okay. So break up in your groups. I'm gonna tell you how to break up in your groups, and let's spend maybe 10 minutes. How many groups? We can do 3 groups.
Groups of 4.
Here's my number.
Groups of 4, and then we'll do 4 here.
The intersectional, how can we work, right? And then prompt number 1 is considering what opportunities to provide for your business. Yes, good one.
Strategy with getting involved. Wing. So it's showing that diversity. Or like, yeah. Like, yeah. Outside of the community. And I think the community is a diverse community. What's it? This could be a jealous. like remind them of it. When I have cousins, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah.
in different ways. And different stuff that happens. Why not have a representative?
Oh, thank you.
Well, first on. But of course, we can. She said earlier, it doesn't have people feel like.
So my.
Yeah. Look, that we'll just assume that I'm helping.
Yeah.
Create that stereotype by going to these different events. Who drives,
Yeah.
with that, help them understand, like, yes, I look like this. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Etiquism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just. Out there. Yeah.
I don't like it. I'm like, okay, I got it.
Yeah, you have to like
See it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and then I'm learning. How you think a lot of people don't. Things like where is this money?
Yeah. That common ground. It's challenging, but I. Oh, it's also people. I straight up had somebody tell me as I was letting him know that the neighbors are selling the house. Next couple of years, I'll be out there and I'll be like, okay, well, you'll. When I was next year, I was really.
Right? We ended up with 2, 3 groups. So okay, I'll read it. One was consider and forecast. Thank you. Well, who are we in relationship with? Who are we hiring for which positions? Right? When you looking for a TC, a transaction coordinator, right? Are you thinking about that when you're in your hiring? So we were just talking about names. A very unique name here in the United States. My name is Monife. That's actually my middle name. Actually, it's my first middle name. That's 2 middle names. But my first name is Humileo. And I don't use that name anymore because it's the conversation. Oh, can I call you fun? No, I'm not that fun. But I remember at a time when I was in IT that I stopped putting on resumes. I would just do my initials. Why do you think that is? Like
A report,
yeah.
you know, the names that people that did.
That same resume with one with my initials on it and one with my name. Guess which ones got called back? Right? So right? I resume names. Right? Because I didn't know that Caleb was going to be as popular as now. Going in any room is 27 Caleb. Caleb in the whole room turns their head. But so are we? Right? What neighborhoods? Typically, what do most agents do when they decide their farm?
Their neighborhood.
Their neighborhood, right? Right? Part of our job, right? So like I said, I live in Northwest Detroit. Every real estate agent up there wants to sell houses in my neighborhood. From every real estate agent, from every day. I get 2, 3 flyers from real estate agents every day, right? Half a mile west of me is a neighborhood that nobody Now, what are those communities going to start doing? Having these conversations with their kids about home ownership and about selling the houses and about real estate and about investment properties, so we can help to change some of those slides off to areas where other agents might not flock to, right? I had a mentor tell me when I first got into the business, Monique, why are you trying to sell these $100,000 houses? Take to sell $100,000 houses, it takes to sell $1 million house. But here's what I know from $100,000. Have good representation. Anything. How many of you know somebody, that realtor, that luxury realtor that doesn't touch a house unless it's, you know? And if that's how you want to, right? Everybody gets to build their business, but what opportunity? In Palmer Woods. Palmer Woods, right? What about Baggett, where it's across Livernois from me? What about Fitzgerald neighborhood just around the way from me? Right? Because part of our business is referrals, right? If you do a bank, I'm just, unfortunately, their bank account does not affect my bank account, right? But a 3,000 square foot house into their house, five, no, don't limit, right? You're limiting, and the limiting belief, limit as to who you can help and how you can help people. Just a different way to think about the whole farming thing. Okay. So then we had number two. Who did number two? Mm-hmm.
Events that they have that go on at the church. Finding a common ground there and letting them know. I don't just do real estate.
Right.
As well.
Right. Yeah. Really, just that box, more than that box, right? And that can be with. I had a coaching session with a client this morning, and we talked about I need you to media sphere, because she's new to real estate. Because when you get into real estate, I don't know if it was just me, my family raised me and grew up with me. Maybe they didn't trust me because they knew who I was. Gets into real estate, that gets out of real estate is because they depend primarily on their family and friends in their local sphere. They, right? And they remember, right? So get to the table. So when I majority of my um, client base for my first two. Right. Yeah. So different people. What else did you guys talk about? What else did you guys talk about? So we talked about groups and communities that you can reach to that were outside of your like
Yeah,
little
like
social
getting
sphere.
involved in your own community outside of it.
Mhm.
Soup kitchen,
Yeah.
doing,
Because it touches base with me being both new to real estate and
yes.
your issue that, first of all, I'm a social.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We're talking about like that, there's a social etiquette that also comes with social media,
It is.
things that because we're a different generation, so what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, like.
Yeah, and the lines are getting blurred.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was part of our
Like to
conversation
us,
this morning.
Like
Yeah.
a picture from 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Social media, to them, it's weird. You're
They're like,
like,
I must be in that group because when I get somebody that I newly friend and they start liking my picture, I'm like, wait a minute, this is like you stay in the last week. But yeah, so but different people like my kids, they have a relationship with social media than I do. Um, this one is a good one. Will we talk about this one any? Your vendors and your right?
Nonprofit. Go to them as their first resource. Those community organizations.
Right.
That that should be front and center because client, whether they're a seller or buyer, a little bit. seminars and trainings. Myths and truths about what don't buy their home because they think they don't have enough.
Down in order to purchase a house. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I always teach.
When I was in IT, there was a kid that was in my, we'd have board, right? So it would be like 4 or 5, like, supposed to collaborate, right, and build software. And there was a kid, brilliant, who was scared of his own shadow, wouldn't talk. And I said, darling, it does no good. Right? You gotta be able to share. Like, you just have all this information. What, right? How about you? Fortunately, yes, I'm there. Oh, TikTok is my. Into TikTok, into from Michigan. Gosh, his name just escaped me. And blue is
Adding a little to what Wild said, also, just telling them that we're just game or, life they live.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if it's a word.
one of the classes that home ownership is, and do we take out a bunch of loans so you end up with a lot of debt, and how to, because student loans, you can't get rid of that. How do you get your education, but then understand what does that mean after you come out of school, right? And defaults on student. I mean, a big issue. Reflect in a positive respect. And like our mission statement,
Yeah,
right?
basically,
Right.
what separates us from.
Highly different than another. The other agent wouldn't.
Right.
But
So what kind, right? How can we add that into our Yeah. Going back to our farm, understanding what is happening in our community and understanding how we can set ourselves apart from the competition. Like Wild said, wow, what about having other agents, maybe even if it's from other market centers that you partner with so that another language or have stayed ridiculously loyal agent or clients because I've been able to find their so-and-so from someplace else, an agent, and I'll vet them. Vet the agents, I'll work with them, I'll find you another agent in another state. Right, that knows that community better all over the state of Michigan. Right? I can sell a house everywhere. A service or a disservice by selling a house in a community that I just don't know the demographic. Out and find it. I read on, right? We have a great relationship when you get that referral check in your dropped in your account, and you don't really have to do a whole lot, right? Referral checks are awesome. They're almost as good as profit sharing checks. Right? I do a lot of business with Ann Arbor. They don't want to drive to Metro Detroit to sell houses for people. Right? All the stuff that Wall and everybody is telling you, value proposition in a positive. Kind of day, all the stuff we were talking
We got
about.
us some lunch, so.
Any ahas? Was this good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Into many places. We have such an open thought. That you would find in the region, I would say our Detroit Metro in our region. So all don't put a lot of conscious awareness around it because white, she's black, he's Hispanic. So like we just look around, walk around not thinking much
Right.
about what we're saying and what we're doing because not the case in many real estate offices.
Yeah.
Where you don't have that diversity. Thoughtful about
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we do. We do live in a structure that the rest of the country doesn't always get to see. Right? And and just the cultures that we experience, like different food, like Detroit food around because of all the different communities that have all kind of melded together and
Dry County. I mean, it's several other states or several other that inclusion and that diversity. And when we're outcasted.
Yeah, and so yeah, we do kind of take it for granted, but it's not the same everywhere. I've heard a lot from other ambassadors from other regions that it is just, it's an uphill battle. And everybody's supposed to think. So it's really cool to be here. Any other ahas from today? What about we already talked about it, but was anybody else surprised by those demographic slides in the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so that had that thing on my heart to be try to implement in our businesses. Of even the unintended messages that we might be putting out, But people see things from their lens, right? And so we have to be cognizant of that. Anything else, guys? So on the diversity hub on KW Connect, there's a lot of information. Right now, we just started a Agent of Distinction certification. It is the first social equity certification that we know of for any brokerage in the country right now that is run by the individual brokerage. So that is, you can do it online. It is at your own leisure, but it gives you a diversity, equity, inclusion certificate for your business or designation. The LEAD program, have you guys heard about LEAD? No. So LEAD is a program that was developed by the Social Equity Task Force. And what it does is a 4-week course. It's 1 day a week. And they teach you how, if you are interested in becoming a leader in the Keller Williams world, the things that you need to know, like the steps that you need to take, kind of your pathway to leadership in Keller Williams. And the people that graduate out of then get put on a talent bank, because what we were finding that we were hiring people that we knew, which meant that we were kind of regurgitating the same people into different positions, but all the same types of people or same people. So this creates a talent bank so that if there's a position that comes up for a team leader position, and if you put your name in the hat that you want to be a team leader or a maps coach or a productivity coach or something in some other area where that opportunity presents itself, you will be notified. So that's a great program as well. And we're just trying to get this out and to as many people as possible in the social equity class. Let people know it's not as scary as it sounds. Right. But anything you guys help us get this message out to as many people as possible, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Night and today I'm ready. I need to step up so we get more people in the back. Are we too far to the side?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, you got.
The licensing only teaches you.
So,
You do.
I tried. Oh, yeah, when you reach.
Yeah. It's true. First thing, start off with your family, your friends. Someone that you know,
Yeah.
and talking to
It's
them,
part of
and then you
consensus when it's.
Yeah, I've never really seen a video of this.
يلا خير ان شاء الله. اوكي. يلا خير ان شاء الله تمام. اهم شيء ان نمشي الاثنين مقدمات.